Ahead of Manchester City's final group game in the Club World Cup against Juventus, Ederson would announce he had no plans to leave City and that his future was at the club, and this announcement was met with mixed reactions from the fans, with some fans such as myself being happy to see Ederson stay at City for at least one more season, which would give the club more time to identify a long-term replacement for him as first choice keeper. Others weren't so happy, claiming he was another player that overstayed their welcome due to Pep's being too loyal to the older players in the squad, such as Kyle Walker, Bernardo Silva and Ilkay Gundogan. But since this announcement, Ederson has been nothing short of a disgrace for Manchester City, with him being one of the key factors in City's 4-3 loss to Al Hilal, which saw them eliminated from the Club World Cup. So today we'll be discussing whether Ederson is the problem at Manchester City and also analysing potential successors to the Brazilian between the sticks. So let's start with the pros on having Ederson in goal at Manchester City, because I think it is important to highlight the good that he can bring to the team as a whole before discussing the flaws in his game, just to give a fair representation of his role at the club, because I just don't want to seem like I'm hating on him after his recent poor performances for the club. And I think there's only one place to start really when we're talking about the strengths to Ederson's game. It's no secret that Ederson's passing range is unlike any other goalkeeper in world football, and it is essential to Manchester City's ability to build up quickly from the back, with the Brazilian also being very composed on the ball under pressure. But it's not just his ability to find his defenders and hold in midfielders with pinpoint short passes from his box that make him so valuable to the City team, but it is also ridiculously accurate long balls forward. The Brazilian provided 4 assists for Manchester City last season, which is an absolutely outrageous number for a goalkeeper, and it's also no surprise that he holds the record for the most Premier League assists from a goalkeeper, with 7 assists in total. And Ederson's unique passing ability allows City to have multiple approaches to their build-up play in games, whether that be fast passing around the back to beat their opponent's press, or launching the ball forward for either Marmoush or Haaland to chase him behind. And this ability makes Ederson an extremely valuable asset for City, and his passing range alone has been instrumental in City's success under Pep Guardiola in the last few years. Despite City's recent success and the host of world-class players they've had under Pep Guardiola, there's always been one thing that City have struggled with, and that is penalties, with players like Rodri, De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Kovacic and Foden all missing key penalties for City over the years. But there's always one player that's always up for taking a penalty, and every time he's been called upon, he is delivered, and that is Ederson. Ederson has been outstanding when called upon for City from the spot due to his incredible ability to stay composed under high pressure situations, which is something I mentioned previously. And although Ederson has only taken 2 penalties for Manchester City, he has scored them both convincingly, with one of them being in the Champions League quarter-finals against Real Madrid and the other one being in the Community Shield final against Manchester United. And this is definitely something to think about when we talk about Ederson potentially leaving the club, because when it comes to Manchester City in penalty shootouts, I think Ederson should always be in the top 5 takers, especially given the record that a lot of our outfield players have from the penalty spot. As you may have noticed, I only complimented Ederson on his overall footballing ability and not his goalkeeping ability, which is actually quite alarming when you think about it, because of how many cons there actually are to his game and how mostly all of them centre around his ability to keep the ball out the back of the Manchester City net. I just mentioned that Ederson has a 100% conversion rate when it comes to taking penalties for Manchester City, but the same can't be said for his save percentage though. Ederson has faced 55 penalties in his career and he has only ever saved 6 of them. And to make matters even worse, his last penalty save was in 2021, meaning since then he has conceded 16 penalties in a row. This record is nothing short of embarrassing, and it leaves City fans praying for a miracle every time the referee points to the spot inside the City box. But this is made even worse when you realise that Ederson himself is responsible for giving away his fair share of penalties by mistiming challenges after rushing out of his goal recklessly, which is something we will cover more in depth later. But obviously, not being able to save penalties isn't the end of the world, because realistically you won't be facing penalties every game. no matter how rash your defender and goalkeeper are. The biggest criticism City fans have of Ederson is his shot-stopping ability, or his lack of it. And despite once winning the Premier League Golden Glove 3 years in a row, Ederson isn't actually that good of a shot-stopper. And a lot of the time Ederson keeps clean sheets is due to the brilliance of the outfield players and their ability to dominate possession, and not down to the amount of key saves he makes to keep his team in the game. Now, that's not to say Ederson hasn't put in key performances for Manchester City in the past, because he played a very, very big role in City winning their first Champions League back in 2023, with big performances against Bayern Munich, Real Madrid and of course Inter Milan in the final. But these good performances are very few and far between for Ederson, with the Brazilian being prone to conceding his opponent's first shot on target. Now, in February 2023, City conceded from their opponent's first shot on target 4 matches in a row, taking their tally at the time up to 10, showing even when City were the best team in Europe, there was still one glaring issue in their squad. Now, obviously, no goalkeeper is perfect and everyone makes mistakes, but the main issue for City is Ederson single-handedly loses them more games than he wins them, compared to teams like Liverpool, who have won countless games over the last few years due to the individual brilliance of Alisson Becker in goal. Lapses in concentration are Ederson's biggest weakness, and they feed into all of the past weaknesses in his game that I've just mentioned in one way or another. Whether this be down to City controlling possession for large parts of the game, giving Ederson very little to do during the game, leading to him trying to charge out of his goal and get involved in the game a little bit. Or it's just Ederson playing sloppy passes out from the back, giving the oppositions a free shot on target or even a goal in certain cases. I complimented Ederson's cool and composed nature earlier in this video, but sometimes it can be a detriment to his game, with him getting too comfortable and complacent on the ball, leading to silly little errors in his game, like Juventus' equaliser in the Club World Cup. The biggest issue with Ederson's lapses in concentration, though, are that they can happen multiple times a game, and he doesn't learn his lesson from the first one or two. They are also extremely common occurrence, with him being very similar to Ramsdale, and we all saw what happened to him after his interview with Ian Wright. Obviously, City would need to sign a replacement for Ederson, because Stefan Ortega just isn't good enough to become the first choice keeper for a big Premier League side, and it's going to be very difficult to replace Ederson's ball playing ability, with him being a generational passer of the ball for a player in his position. But City should be aiming to get someone with at least half his ball playing ability, and instead go for someone that's a way better shot stopper than him. And the two names that have been mentioned the most are Diogo Costa of FC Porto and Lucas Chevalier from Lille. But in today's video, I'd like to just focus on Costa, with him being my preferred option and him being the one that has the heaviest links to Manchester City in the last few months. Diogo Costa is the first choice keeper for FC Porto and the Portuguese national team, and the 25-year-old kept 16 clean sheets in 32 league matches for Porto, with him only conceding 27 goals from a total of 87 shots in the 24-25 season, ending the campaign with a 69% save percentage. When you compare this to Ederson's 10 clean sheets in 26 appearances, with him conceding 26 goals from a total of 79 shots on his goal, ending the campaign with only a 67% save percentage. This shows that despite conceding more goals, Costa is the stronger shot stopper with a marginally higher save percentage, but it becomes more impressive when you factor in the fact that he's faced more shots on his goal. And Costa's also made more aerial claims than Ederson last season, showing that he can command his area from corners and crosses, which is something that Ederson can sometimes struggle with. But obviously, when it comes to playmaking ability, Ederson is clear of Costa, with the Brazilian registering 4 assists compared to Costa's 0. But that doesn't mean that Costa isn't competent with the ball at his feet, because he completed 183 long passes last season with a long ball accuracy of 48.8%, an overall passing percentage of 81.6%. These numbers may be less than the ones that Ederson put up last season, but I think it would be extremely beneficial for City to focus on shot stopping as their main priority when signing a new keeper. Because all the other big teams like PSG with Donnarumma, Real Madrid with Thibaut Courtois, and Liverpool, as I've already mentioned, with Alisson Becker, have elite shot stoppers, and that is a big part as to why they've been successful over the years. Although I think City can still be successful with Ederson in goal this season because he still has something to give to the side, I also believe it is time for the club to start to identify replacement goalkeepers for next season. Because with Ederson on the decline and Ortega not being good enough to be the first choice keeper, as we learned from last season, City could find themselves in trouble if they don't address this growing issue in the squad, which is something they have been guilty of in the past, case in point being the signing a backup for Rodri. But hopefully the club have learnt their lesson from that situation and go out and identify a replacement for Ederson and sign them in either January or next summer. But that's just my thoughts on the situation. Please do leave your thoughts on the situation in the comments below and like the video if you enjoyed, and also if you think that Diego Costa would be a good fit for Manchester City. And also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. The goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers and all of your support is very much appreciated. And finally, check out the rest of the videos on the channel if this is the first time you've come across one of my videos. With all that being said, that's the end of today's video and I will see you in the next.
Shut down cases, they belly dots to the can't see faces. Chasing the bad guy chase it. You don't wanna be the one like Ace and like GT trying to turn them out wasted. Aye, tell a bad bitch come break it. Body come mad, come shake it. Then get back to the basics. Bro, done shut down cases. They belly dots to the